Hello, welcome to the Upside Down. This is Ellen Max, and you are stuck in the Upside Down with us during episode 7. Episode 7 is going to focus on Stranger Things, season 1, episode 5. We're going to have a little recap during 3 and 4, where, if you can remember, we see Joyce struggling with her own instincts. She thinks that Will is still alive and is getting a sense through the lights and the walls. Overwhelmed by her grief and not being able to get to him, she is trying to convince not only herself but those around her that she is not crazy. Determined to get Will, she sacrifices her own well-being and mental and physical health. As a mom, I know this to be true. The feeling that no matter what, there is no end to a fight to finding your child. Whatever it takes to find Will and convince that he isn't the dead body that they found, and that the body they found doesn't even have the birthmark that Will has, convinces Joyce that he is still alive. Meanwhile, Hopper is now starting to become suspicious of all of it. What lengths would you go to find the truth of your own child that's missing? I know I would go to any length. Max, what about you?
100%. And I really feel for Joyce in this episode. As a mother, I feel like intuition is something that I'm not going to say all because I don't want to generalize, but most mothers have intuition. And if there's something wrong with your child or there's something going on with your child, especially when it's a situation like this, I feel like we get that intuition, right? And I feel for her. I feel like I would be so frustrated if I was in her situation with no one believing her. She knows that something's not right. Again, I relate to her. I would do anything for my kids. I feel like I would have done the same as Joyce, and I would keep fighting even if people thought that I was crazy and that I shouldn't be. I would still keep fighting. So back in to talk about episode 3 and 4, they start to lose hope, but Elle then shows Mike that Will is alive. They're able to use the walkie-talkie and her psychic abilities, and they can communicate with Will in the Upside Down. So Mike's convinced at this point. Lucas is still convinced that Will's dead, and he thinks Elle is just a troublemaker, just this girl who's, getting Mike in trouble. Dustin, good old Dustin, he uses his intellect to guide the group and get some equipment that can help communicate with Will. So I feel like is kind of like that middleman. He's all right, Lucas isn't convinced. Mike really thinks that, Will is alive. Let me see what I can do to kind of, help communicate with Will. So I've had, friendships throughout my life. I'm very fortunate. I've never really lost a close friend when I was young. As an adult, I did have a friend that I lost to diabetes as a kid. At the time, I didn't really understand diabetes, and I understood death, but only to a certain point. And we weren't really close, so it was a little bit of a different situation for me than what they're going through. What about you, Elle? Have you ever had to experience something like that?
I actually did, and I think I was the kid's age at the time. I think I was 12. And it's not that he was a good friend, but he was a friend in the neighborhood that I met. And it was one of those situations where everybody knew he had a crush on me, as young as we were. But he felt even more drawn to me when my mom told him that I had leukemia as a young child, because the kid himself actually had a brain tumor. And myself and my siblings and some of the neighborhood kids that I was friends with, we always tried to include him in any of the games and activities we were doing. And there were moments where he was trying to just fit in, and you could tell that he was struggling with his condition. And it was really heartbreaking when I got the phone call that he passed away, because as a young person who had just survived a very, lethal type of leukemia, that this boy that I met that seemed to understand what I went through just suddenly died. And I remember where I was. I remember when my parents told me, and I remember feeling so heartbroken, like I could have done something more, even though obviously I couldn't. I just
Yeah, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you had to go through that. But I think when you're a child, it's hard to kind of process those feelings and grief too. I know as an adult, it's really hard to process grief. So as a child, and it sounds like you had a connection with this person that, that must have been really hard. I'm so sorry that you had to go through that.
Yeah, thanks, Max. It was really hard. And I think watching these couple of episodes, it's kind of like I kind of know how these kids feel once they find out that Will is dead, even though we now know he's not. How they must feel. I mean, watching Mike's reaction when he finds out and comes through the door and his mom is there. Like I can totally feel that. And I think it makes these episodes very relatable. And during episode 5, which is the one we're reviewing today, takes a major turning point because now the characters are starting to understand that Will isn't missing and Will isn't dead. We know, Max, that in real time, in real life, that kids go missing every day, and the lengths that most people go through to help finding these kids, like search parties. When you see a lot of the episodes on Dateline and stuff, they have search parties and communities come together. A lot of times you do see the parents, specifically the mother, on camera saying, I know that my son or daughter is alive, like I can feel it. Or they even say, I feel it, they're no longer here. And some of them are just almost in denial, which, to be honest, I probably would be too if I felt like my child had passed, but I didn't want to accept it. And nowadays we also have social media, which back then they didn't. They had the news, and it seemed during the first 4 episodes, the news was always on. So, like, even though it wasn't online stuff, you couldn't escape from hearing it. Um, so yeah, just nowadays, I feel like we're a little more lucky with that. And we have like DNA. They didn't have DNA in the 80s. So as convinced as Joyce was that that wasn't her son, and she kept saying, I don't know what that thing is, but that's not my son. They couldn't have tested the DNA back then. And the other thing that kind of drew me into episode 5, and now I'm recalling it from the previous episodes, is that retro music that the Duffer brothers choose when opening it up. It's like if you just closed your eyes and you heard that, you knew you were watching Stranger Things, which is awesome.
Yeah, I love that too. And thinking about like what you said about going back to the 80s, you're right. Like they didn't have half of or even close to the technology we have now. I don't know if you remember this, but I remember them putting missing children on like milk cartons.
Oh my
We
God,
didn't
yes.
have the plastic milk carton. We had like cardboard ones, and they would put them on the back. And I would also you'd see them in the grocery stores on like not like a community board, but a board that they would have, and it would have all, have you seen this child? And it would say, and they'd have, the picture of the child. Now they still have them. I see them in Walmart sometimes, but now they have like the age progression, which is, a newer thing.
Yeah, and their color. Before they were black and white.
Yes. Yes. So
You can even
also, also in this episode, Elle, they figure out that Elle can use the radio to communicate with Will, and they learn that Will is alive and he is in the upside down. And you had mentioned how, that a lot of the episodes are relatable. And I do think that they put a lot of different things from like different references from different movies and things. And one of them that reminded me of like the whole communication with the radios and finding him in the upside down is E.T. So E.T. actually premiered June 11th, 1982. It was directed by Spielberg. Extraterrestrial was the highest grossing film of the decade. It had Henry Thomas Eliot and then Drew Barrymore, which is in one of her first like grossing film roles, major film roles. And I, to this day, still love Drew. She is just great. I remember seeing her, I think it was in like The Firestarter or something too. That movie always like stuck with me for some reason. And I'm terrified of fires. I wonder if maybe she traumatized me a little. But I do, I do love Drew. I've been told in the past that I resembled her, and I always took that as like a compliment. I still watch her talk show. I've seen it like a few times, definitely not like a dedicated like talk show person. I do work, so I don't have a lot of time to watch talk shows, but I do enjoy watching her talk show, and I still love her style and her personality.
Yeah, how can you not love Drew, especially in this movie E.T.? And I remember like with the flowers and Elliot's mom, like, no, I think it was the brother. And she's like, she's trying to talk, and like you can see how young she actually is in real life based on how she's talking in the movie. She's always been a favorite of mine as well. I love that she's like an authentic person. She definitely has come from a challenging background. She, at 7 years old, she became one of the most famous children in America as an actress. She
Wow.
was one of the first artists to win a Young Artist Award. She was the youngest person to ever host Saturday Night Live. I really want to go back and see this because I don't remember watching this episode. Behind the cameras, her childhood was spinning, spiraling out of control. She didn't really know her father. He left when she was an infant. Her mother became her manager, but was treating her like a friend and was bringing her to like Studio 54 and stuff, and letting people around her feed her alcohol. By the time she was 13, she was already into drugs and had to enter rehab for the first time. And then at 13, later on when she was 13, her mother had her committed to a psychiatric hospital in California, where she spent 18 months. And then after being released shortly after, age 14, she attempted suicide and was sent back to treatment. Doctors at these places, you know, the best advice they could give her so she wouldn't have any more relapse was to file for emancipation from her mother. And I believe that her mother actually agreed. I think her mother realized that she wasn't doing her daughter any good. And the courts actually allowed her to become emancipated. I know that she had moved out on her own. She got her own place and she was paying her own bills. And in the beginning, the community, you know, that were hiring people to act and all that, they were kind of shunning her because she emancipated, and it was kind of like not a thing that kids did back then. But then, you know, she wrote a memoir. She wrote her first book when she was 15, and it actually became a New York Times bestseller, which is amazing. And that kind of, you know, fire started her career again. And then she started her own film company. I think it was called Flower Films. She was completely in control of the projects that she wanted to work on. We remember her from The Wedding Singer, Charlie's Angels. She is a mother now. I think she has two daughters, Olive and Frankie. And after becoming a mother and bringing everything full circle, that's when she started her talk show. Which honestly, Max, I haven't watched either too much. Maybe I'm just not awake at that hour or something when it's on daytime. But I've seen clips of it. Like, I love watching clips with her and like Jimmy Fallon and stuff. And so, yeah, it's probably the entertaining parts. I would rather watch those parts, not like the serious parts.
Yeah, I didn't know a lot of that about her. I would love to read that book. I'm gonna have to, a memoir. I'll have to look it up because I would love to hear more about that. That was very interesting. I knew she had a really rough upbringing, but I didn't know details.
Yeah, and I wasn't clear in all the details. I do remember seeing clips of like her, I don't know, it couldn't have been in the news, but they would show clips of her wasted at a very young age. And I think that's kind of what I remembered I didn't realize she was in and out of rehab, and I didn't realize that she tried to commit suicide. So she's come such a long way. What an inspiration.
Yeah, absolutely. And also in E.T., Elliot creates a communication device to help E.T. So it reminds me of, Stranger Things when Dustin is creating something to use to communicate. So in E.T., they used a speak and spell, which I had as a kid. Did you have one, Al?
I had one as a kid. I can remember that robotic voice. Like, I wish I could imitate it.
Yeah,
So
and it wasn't it in Toy Story too?
maybe.
I feel like I don't mean like Toy Story number 2, I mean like Toy Story, like the original
Yeah.
one. I feel like there was a speak and spell in that. I know there was an Etch a Sketch, that's another like back to the 80s
Yes,
toy.
definitely.
So they also use wires, cans, household electronics, whatever they could find really, to help ET communicate with his spaceship and find his parents, which is like crazy because thinking now, like back in the 80s, they didn't have a lot of communication devices. And the kids really had to be creative and use their imagination to come up with ways to communicate with each other. I feel like as a child myself, more to the 90s, I would say, because the 80s I was really little. 90s, we definitely found ways to communicate with each other without using the cell phones and pagers and stuff like that. What about you, Elle? What devices or things like games or whatever do you remember from the 80s?
Well, I definitely remember like the walkie-talkie part. Were they like really good ones? No, but they sufficed, if you had a sibling in the house and they were in one bedroom and you were in another. So, that was probably when they started coming out with those type of things. I think the things about the electronics in the 80s I remember most about was like the VHSs with the VCRs. Rewind, stop, trying to get back to the place that you want. I'm pretty sure Nintendo and Atari were out at that times, although I never played Atari. I mostly played Nintendo and just like the basics, like Donkey Kong and Super Mario Brothers. Oh, yeah, and Duck Hunt. I remember thinking how cool were we that we could shoot the TV with a gun. I think I'm not sure what age I was when I had a Walkman, but I definitely remember the cassette tape and the boombox and the Walkman. I remember that my grandfather had an IBM computer, which was so like 80s digital. Like it was like a gray screen with like orange text across the screen. And even the games that we played on there were just like very basic. And we used a floppy disk whenever we wanted to see something or play something. And then I know that they had some cameras like Jonathan Byers had in the show, but they were film based. So what did they call those? Uh,
I
we
don't
had a
know. I
tape.
remember like I had a camcorder with like a little tape, but I don't remember what they were before that, prior to that, what they were called.
Yeah, it was like that roll of film that you had to get developed. But they
Yeah,
called
not a
them.
Polaroid because that was like the one that just spits it out right away. I think it's just like a
Yeah,
film camera.
yeah, and you pull out the negatives and then get them. Um, what are we talking about here? Developed. You get them developed. So you wouldn't even know what you took pictures of until they were fully developed and you got them back later. Like
Oh,
now
yeah.
we
I remember getting in trouble with the lady at Walgreens because we were trying to develop pictures from like a party that we had. And like we were not of age and we were drinking and like smoking pot and rolling it. And there was like pictures of it. And the lady was like, do not ever bring pictures like that here again.
Oh my God. Well, it definitely was not the 80s for you, Max, but
No, that would have been the 90s, but we still have those. They had like the disposable cameras.
yes, yes. That's so funny. Yeah, I can't really remember anything else. What about you?
So I remember a lot of that, like definitely the cassette tapes. My first car, again, this 90s, but my first car had a tape deck in it. And I remember I would put like the tape deck in it, and it had this little wire that would attach to a Discman. And I would like play the CDs, but like every time you go over a bump, it would skip. So I do remember that. I played Atari. I'm a little older than you, not much older than you, but we had an Atari. We had an Atari before we had a Nintendo. And I remember playing Frogger. You had to get the Frogger across the street before he got squished.
Yeah.
And again, though, like basic, not anything close to what we have now. And I remember it had like a joystick type thing. It wasn't like a regular controller.
Yeah.
And I played Pac-Man. We did play Nintendo. Always had a Nintendo in my house with the Duck Hunt and the Mario Brothers. So we were poor. We did not have computers. Were not a common like household item even
Yeah.
in the 90s. Like when I was in high school, they weren't. So I remember playing on the computer at school. We would have like a class. It was funny. It was a typing class, and you would type on the typewriter. It would teach you where to place your fingers and all that. But we had 2 computers in the room, and we would take turns on the computers, and we would play Oregon Trail. I don't know if you remember Oregon Trail.
I do, actually.
Yeah, so I remember playing that at school.
Very slow moving video game.
Yes, and you'd be like killed by a snake or something like in the desert.
Nice.
So, speaking of school, in Stranger Things, they really rely on Mr. Clark, the science teacher, a lot throughout the show. They, go to him pretty often, ask him for different ideas. As we know, like by the end of the show, he becomes like a pretty good big piece of the part. But in this episode, they do go to Mr. Clark to ask him about alternate dimensions and if they could exist. Because, at this point, they know that Will is in the upside down, but they're really not sure like what that is. So they talk about the alternate dimensions, which kind of brings us to the title of the episode. So they talk about how humans are like acrobats walking on a tightrope, and they're able to move only in limited directions. But a flea can move around the rope in ways that an acrobat cannot. So if enough energy exists, a gate could theoretically open and connect the 2 dimensions. So that was where they got the title for this episode. So again, the kids start to trust Mr. Clark. They ask him questions. They really can't trust other adults. Other adults think that they're not, that they're just kids and they don't know what they're talking about, but they feel like they can really trust Mr. Clark. And I love that, because I feel like nowadays teachers are so limited to what they're allowed to do for the kids, and they're not allowed to offer advice or go outside their quote unquote handbook to, help the kids. And it doesn't give them a lot of resources and people that they trust. And it's really sad, because I feel like that is so important for kids to have adults they can trust besides their parents, right? Because a lot of times kids don't go to their parents with certain things. So it's so important for them to have like somebody at school or another adult in their life that they can trust and talk to. And it's really kind of sad that it's not more common that it's a teacher, because I feel like when I was younger, it was very common. You did get really close with your teachers, and you were able to have conversations with them, and they would kind of help guide you through adolescence and, different types of life. And they just don't really have that anymore. What do you think, Al?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I just remember being a kid, and especially like if I did something wrong, like over the weekend, or, if it was a boy or something like that, I definitely couldn't talk to my parents about it. And if I ever had, and I have had teachers that I can remember, that I felt not just about trust, but like that I connected with enough that I thought they would understand what I was talking about. And not saying judge, but just looking at me like, okay, well, this student is clearly struggling with this, so let me see what type of advice I can offer them. And nowadays, I don't even think the teachers and the staff are allowed to have these conversations, because school boards decide otherwise, or what have you. And it's really sad. I would really love for my kids to have someone other than myself and their father, because what are they supposed to do if they don't have anyone to trust? Anyways, that's just my take on it. Yeah, Mr. Clark's awesome. I don't think I had a science teacher like him, but I think if I did, I probably would have paid attention or been able to understand what I was being taught a lot better. And the kids, they have such like an awesome imagination so that they have the ability to like think things through and then ask the right questions. We should be encouraging our kids more now than ever before because they're so flooded, with like mind controlled electronics that they're losing their imagination. I would want my kids to ask the questions, the hard questions. And one of the questions, obviously, that they're discussing in this episode is, do alternate dimensions exist? And it's something that I've heard about these concepts, and not just in this series or this season. I've also heard about it in other things that I've watched, like Big Bang Theory. They talk about, alternate dimensions. We've also heard it when we watched movies like what is it? Doctor Strange, what's his name? Spider-Man.
Oh,
Those
yeah,
movies.
Spider-Man, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
Flash.
Yeah, the Marvel movies, they talk about multiple dimensions. I know
I
in one
think
of
the
Doctor
Flash
Strange.
was I used to watch, like, the show. They had a series. It wasn't I don't think it was called The Flash, but it was about the Flash, and that whole series was about, like, alternate dimensions.
Yeah, like the end game of Marvel, they basically have to use the multiple dimensions to go back and save half of their people. So anyways, I know it all sounds fictitious, but if you actually look into it, there are scientists, I think they're called theoretical physicists, that are doing the research. And I know that nothing has been proven, but these are the theories that there actually are extra dimensions out there, which is part of string theory, beyond 3 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time that we experience as humans. The multiverse, which are basically parallel universes. Many universes could exist alongside of our own. And then quantum interpretations, which are basically different outcomes of events that may occur in separate parallel realities, which I think not in theoretical physicists, but in like theory, in my mind, I kind of feel like that is true because everybody is perceiving some major situation in different ways, different parts of the world, depending on where they are, depending on the time of day and all that. So to me, that kind of makes sense. So after having the conversations with Mr. Clark, the boys start to realize that the gate between the worlds may actually exist. And they refer back to their favorite game, D&D, and I think it was Dustin, very quickly, the Veil of Shadows. He's like, it's the Veil of Shadows. And everyone's like, what? The dimension of dark reflection of our world. And I've never played this game, but to me, how imaginative it is, and then to have that ability to connect it with real science stuff that he's learned.
Yeah, he's definitely really smart to be able to do that.
Yes.
I also definitely like I appreciate like the research that you did because I've always believed that there's like definitely parallel universes. The other ones I wasn't too like familiar with, but again, like I think from watching The Flash, I was kind of like, all right, that could possibly be a thing. And like, you hear terms like doppelganger or deja vu. I feel like those are like products of this alternate dimension. Like things happen where you think they already happened. Well, maybe they did in a different dimension. Do you understand? Like, I feel like
Yeah.
that's how I've kind of like, I guess, justified it in my brain because it's so hard to grasp that I think that the universe is so big, first of all, and that that is a possibility. I feel like that's a lot to grasp.
Yeah, it is a lot to grasp, but if you think about it in terms of relativity, it makes sense.
It does. And again, I never played Dungeons and Dragons, but I love the reference and how Dustin's able to connect that. And without like knowing a lot about the game, I have learned that the dungeon master creates a theme, the players, and they exist like in towns, monsters. There's like rules that like in each setting that takes place. The roll dice like decides outcomes. So it's a pretty like intricate game too. And it can improvise players to do like unexpected things. So I think again, like this is a really great game. They were able to connect it to this alternate dimension. It goes back to again like the 80s where like board games were a thing, right? I try to play board games with my kids now and we still do. Or like I don't know if you call this a board game, but just family games. Like I just love the idea that there was a game where it would keep the kids and the family like present and that you had to use creativity and use your mind and maybe kind of think outside the box. I feel like we don't have many games like that now.
Yeah, I totally agree. And what this game actually does is forces the kids, as they take turns being dungeon master, to access their creative mind. And they basically have to write up all these moving parts to the game. And that's why they keep this big binder, because they're saving like platforms that they create, so that whichever platform this is coming from, they're definitely, when they labeled the Demogorgons and the Veil of Shadows and all that, that's coming from something that they wrote in these games. And that's awesome. That's like writing a storybook and illustrating it all at the same time, and then, listing the possibilities of what people will say about it. Like it's like an all-in-one thing that's in it. And plus, it gets the group of kids to like want to play the game. Like not only did
Yeah.
they do that, but it's enticing them to like want to find out what happens. And I love it. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I agree.
And I love that they always refer back to this game for resources. During this episode, some of the players that are now kind of like, they're all in different parts in the scene, but they're all realizing that Will is not missing. Will is not that dead body. And that includes Dustin, Mike, now Lucas, Nancy, Jonathan, and now Hopper. Hopper does break into the Hawkins labs. I think when he finishes in the lab, he like touches the entryway to the Upside Down. It's like kind of gross. It's like gooey and dark
Oh,
looking.
yeah. Yep.
He does remember that, even though I remember that whoever it was, it must have been a scientist, that they drug him. But we find him that he woke up in his home, has no idea how he got there, but somehow realizes that his apartment's bugged and starts to go around and investigate that. He also goes to where Will's alleged dead body is, and he kind of fights his way in there, and he, using his instincts, he like examines the body with his hand and then feels how hollow Will's chest is. And then cutting him open, it like literally stuffed animal fluff comes out of it. So he realizes that Hawkins' lab is like covering all this up, but he doesn't understand why yet.
Yeah, that whole part is crazy. So this episode, this also Joyce is still struggling to find Will. And Lonnie, Will's dad, I believe it's Will's dad.
Yeah.
Sorry, at first I thought maybe stepdad, like, and that they had broken up, but no, it's his dad. He comes and he tries to manipulate Joyce, and basically he's telling her like, you're crazy, you need to get help, like he's dead, you need to accept it. We find out that he is really just trying to get life insurance money from Will, which infuriates me. I really just wanted to punch him in the face, but she kicks him out. So again, like I think this episode touches a little bit, besides that part with his dad, but about fake news, right? Because they're listening. Everyone in town, except for, we'll say, Joyce, and now Hopper is starting to figure it out, and the kids, they're watching the news. They're listening to whatever they're telling them on the news and hiding everything that's going on, and making it look like Joyce is crazy. She doesn't know what she's talking about. That's really Will. And again, like that kind of circles back to nowadays too. We have the news and we have AI, and AI can manipulate anything and make it look like something it's so completely not. And there's so many things to question because we never know what's accurate and what's not. I know for me, like I'm still learning AI. I'm not really comfortable with it. I use it sometimes, but I don't use it very often. I don't know a lot about it. I get a little skeptical about it. I think it's a good tool if it's used correctly, but I do feel like, again, it can be used to manipulate things and make things look like something that they're not. And that can be really dangerous. And it makes it really hard to determine what's real and what's made up. And again, like the news is controlled by different agencies and the government, and they're only telling us what we want to hear. We're not, or, what they want to tell us. It's very filtered. You're not always getting the 100% information. What do you think about all that, Elle, like with the fake news and AI?
Yeah, so like one of the things that like I always forgot about is that Hawkins Lab is actually run by the CIA. And I think it had something to do with Russia. I can't remember. So this is an actual government agency that is faking Will's death and is basically telling everyone through the news that he's dead and this is his body. And they convince one of the investigating officers to make sure no one goes near the body while he discovers it or fake discovers it and all that. And I remember that scene when the boys arrive and they're watching them pull this kid that's dressed like Will come out of the body of water. So I'm like, how crazy is that that's a government agent putting that fake news out there back in the 80s, and now anyone can put fake news out there. And it's
Well, and
like,
I do think those government agencies are still doing it now.
well, yes, of course, but I'm just saying, like, even back then when people didn't know better than to trust the news, well, it's on the news, so it must be true. And now we have not just the news. It's not just Twitter. It's not just Facebook and I can't think of all of them right now, but um and within those there are these different, I wouldn't even call them news sources. I would just call them sources that are putting these fake things out there. And it's like it's not just that you have to re-Google, the topic. Excuse me. You have to Google the source and is it actual? And one of the things that I always get upset with is when we see all of the missing kids online and the way that they're displayed is like a want ad. It's not like a family reaching out saying, please, my daughter's been missing for 10 days. I'm asking for, your help and support. It's usually one photo. It's like a mugshot photo of the kid, and you never know exactly like who is posting the ad. And I definitely want to help as many people as I can help find their kids, but it's hard to take some of these things seriously because I don't know if they're true.
And I think the other thing too is you don't ever want to, like, I never want to click on anything
Yeah.
because if you could click on something, it could be a virus or a hacker or whatever. So it's like sometimes they'll put, a little bit of information about a missing child or a situation, and then there's a link. Well, I'm not clicking that link. So I agree. Like, there definitely needs to be a more like, I guess, like standardized display of like the missing child to like indicate that it's from like the police or whatever, like a legit source, like some sort of branding or something to like set it apart from, like you said, the other ones that may be scams.
Yeah, definitely. And I've been hacked before, so
So also in this episode, which this is one of my favorite parts of this episode, is we really start to see Nancy grow into her leadership, we'll say leadership role. She really wants to do whatever it takes to find Barb and the creature that she encountered, which was horrifying, by the way. So I really love that, and it kinda just brought me to think about, like, what would you do if one of your closest friends went missing? Like, how far would you go? So I really had to, like, think about that, and I feel like it's very depending on my relationship with the person. Not that, like I don't want that to, like, I guess that comes out wrong, like, not that, like, if you're not my best friend, I'm not gonna come look for you, but, like, obviously, like, my relationship with you, Elle, might be different than, like, a friend or an acquaintance, we'll say. But if a close friend of mine, anything ever happened to or they went missing, I feel like it would be very similar to like if one of my children went missing. I would go to the ends of the earth to try to find this person or find out what happened to them and get justice for them as well in whatever happened, whatever that situation would be. So I feel like for me, that bond is very similar to a bond I would have with my child or someone else that I would really love and care about. What about you, Elle? Are you gonna come find me if I go missing?
Of course I will. And honestly, Nancy isn't just a good friend to Barb with this notion. She is someone who is willing to go beyond the scope of popularity and having a boyfriend like Steve and doing what's right, fighting for the underdog. And even when she witnesses the monster, which we now know is a Demogorgon, it's so inspiring. Like to me, it takes a certain someone to do that. And I feel like that's one of the reasons you and I are so bonded because even though a lot of times it's against our better judgment, and we have learned from that since mistakes we've made in the past. But to me, that's what you do. That's the right thing to do. Um, I do think that sometimes I felt like, given her age, and I guess because it was the 80s, and as long as kids came home before dark, like you just didn't worry about them. Like they go to the gun shops, they go to the shooting range, like they're doing things that a typical 16-year-old kid doesn't do. But I think in the big picture, yeah, I would go whatever it would take. Whatever, girl. I
Well, and I
got
think you made a good point. Like nowadays, that wouldn't happen like that. But I think in the 80s, you figure a really small town in the middle of nowhere, kind of, I feel like that could have absolutely happened. Like 16-year-olds probably did go to the gun shop and the shooting range because it was a thing back then.
Yeah. Yeah. Another fine point to exemplify true friendship is when the boys and well, Elle doesn't have a compass, but the boys use their compasses. I forget. I think that they were talking about the compasses inside, but anyways, they were talking about true north and the compass. So they decide to find out what was disrupting the compass from showing the true north. Like something was also obviously altering it. So they take to the train tracks to find their true north. They're trying to find like some sort of magnetic field that is interfering with their compasses to kind of like keep them away from finding the gateway to the upside down. In this episode and everything that happens in this part of the episode just reminds me of the movie Stand By Me. I was telling Max earlier, like, this is a movie I've probably seen over 50 times. I've watched it as a kid growing up. I've seen it as a teenager and as an adult. Absolutely love this movie. In the movie, the kids are actually searching for a missing person. And like Stranger Things, both of these group of kids are basically showing the audience that this is bigger than themselves. Like they're young, they're 11 and 12. They probably shouldn't be going on this journey, but again, it's not about them. It's just bigger than them, and they just feel compelled to do it. During both of the journeys, it's showing what a strong bond between both friend groups have because they're trusting each other, they're relying on each other, and they both take to the train tracks. Now, in a real world, I don't think we really use compasses, but if you're someone that like goes on hiking trips or they teach them with the Cub Scouts and stuff. They do use compasses to teach them. I don't know, what would you call it? Like, how to,
Navigation.
yeah, navigation, but like survival skills, I guess.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I'm just going to throw this out there. I've never used a compass in my life. I don't even know how to use it. So apparently I will not survive. Just saying. So I throw that out there.
Yeah, so in real life, the things that could throw off a compass true north are things like bridges, railroad tracks, power lines, even cars, because they have like a magnetized component to it. And in this scene, it does remind me of the scene when the kids in Stand By Me, there are 4 12-year-olds, pretty much the same age, and they are all on the search to find a missing boy, just like in Stranger Things. They both face danger. They're learning a lot about themselves and like who they really are. And the whole experience, in essence, ends up strengthening both friendship groups. In the movie Stand By Me, it's a lot of adventure. There's some funny parts. And in the end, if you've seen it, it's pretty emotional. It's an emotional ending. It kind of forces them to grow up a little bit. And sorry, Max, I know you haven't seen this movie, but it's one of the best movies made, I think.
Well, I'm going to be watching it now. And yes, everyone, I was living under a rock, apparently. I've heard about this movie so many times. I thought I'd seen it. I could have memory loss. I was saying that to Elle earlier. It's very possible that I watched this movie and my old brain just doesn't remember it. But it's going to be a watch for me. So I'll be updating later after I watch it.
Yes. And I mean, just the simple fact of the cast: Will Wheaton, the sad late River Phoenix, Corey Feldman, Jerry O'Connell. Like, I, to me, I laugh because of how handsome Jerry O'Connell is as a man and how like cute and chubby he was as a boy in this movie. It doesn't make sense to me, but that's fine. Kiefer Sutherland, I think it was right before that vampire movie he was in. Richard Dreyfuss, he's more of the narrator, looking back in. And John Cusack, he's one of the teenagers, that aren't very nice. And I barely recognized him in that movie too. And
Yeah,
it's fun.
definitely a good cast. And
It,
I was chubby and I'm a beautiful woman now. I'm just saying. Me and Jerry, we go way back.
it's just funny because like Jerry O'Connell is like really tall and really thin and fit, and like women will like I mean, look who he's married to, Rebecca Romaine. Like, it's just funny when you look at the character he plays in this movie. Like, he plays the little fat kid, and I'm saying it because it's fun. It's not like insulting. It's just who he was back then.
No, I'm totally just joking. I know what you're saying. I didn't see the movie, but I did see like the pictures and stuff. I was looking, with Chat GBT showed me some pictures, and yes, it did not even look like him. Like, I had to like zoom in and then like figure out. I was like, all right, like trying to figure out who everyone was, and then I was like, there he is. So I totally get what you're saying. It's really funny.
Yeah, because all of those characters look like themselves as younger kids, but Jerry O'Connell does not.
Well, and it's funny that you say that too, because even like going back to Stranger Things, right? We watched them they were in that awkward stage. Like all of us kids have that awkward stage where I had, the braces and the big bangs. And, again, I was a little chubby. So we all have that awkward stage. And I feel like Stranger Things, they were younger. The, actresses and actors were younger. And we kind of see them like start off in those awkward stages. But by the end of the show, like they're beautiful adults, all of them.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Even one of them has a kid, which is awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think one of the most memorable lines of this movie, and I believe it's Richard Dreyfuss speaking at the end, reflection on what they went through, is I never had any friends later on like the ones I had when I was 12. Jesus, does anyone? I don't think so. Even though you and I did meet at an older age. I still feel like we've been friends since we were kids. It just only makes sense that way.
I have one or maybe two friends from when I was 10 or 11. I met them when I was 10 or 11. But yes, I feel like even though, but I don't know. It's just so funny because we're so old. Because I feel like when you say, like, oh, we met like later in life, to me, it feels like I've known you forever. Like
Yeah.
later in life, to me, it was like 25 years ago. And that feel like when I think about that, it feels so long, long ago.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like we weren't kids when we met because I just felt like we were, even though we had kids.
Well, and I feel like because we've grown so much
Yeah.
since then and we've learned so much. And I know, both of us have changed a lot and healed mentally and have worked on ourselves. So we're, in a way, we're like different people.
Yes. I agree.
So also in Stranger Things, they introduced the bath, this deprivation. It's like a deprivation tank. So it's very similar to a deprivation tank. Both of them fill with water and salt. They're both designed to help a person relax and focus on a conscious mind. So they use this for Elle, and they help Elle regenerate her psychic abilities. So getting into this bath helps her abilities get stronger and she can use them. The bath's design and purpose was, again, like I said, inspired by a deprivation tank. So I don't know if I feel like, all right, I like water. So I feel like I could probably go into one of those. I don't know about the contraption they put over her head, how I would feel about that. And this is kind of weird to say because you're in water, but I'm also afraid of heights. So I feel like even just climbing up to the top of that thing would scare me. So I honestly don't know if I could do that. What about you, Elle? Do you think you could get into the tank?
So I have gone to one of those wellness places where they do like the IV stuff and the cold thing. And I did the cold thing, and I think I was able to do the cold thing because you go in and you're standing up and they close the door, but you can see out the window and you can like communicate and you can hear the person outside. But for me, the deprivation tank, the reason I couldn't do it is because they have to close it completely. And you're basically left in the dark. So it's not the water part that bothers me. It's being closed in like that and not having control. Not that I think that someone would intentionally keep me locked in there, but I would be focused on the fear that I couldn't get out if I needed to.
Yeah, I definitely feel that
Yeah.
100%.
And it's like, it's not that I'm claustrophobic, it's that I'm had more like afraid because you're not able to open it. They have to open it.
So basically, like, I feel like your life is in someone else's hands. Because
Yeah.
if they leave you in there, yeah, no, I totally get that. I wasn't really looking at it from that perspective, too. But yeah, even like, I had a hard time doing an MRI. And you're not even like sealed.
Yeah, I mean, I've done MRIs. I've done brain MRIs where they have to put your head in a cage before it goes in. And I never had a problem with it because I knew what the parameters were. Like, you're not locked in it. And the minute you press that button, they react to it. So even though I'm not comfortable with it, I definitely can handle it. And when they were like, okay, this is going to be 20 seconds, then I would count to my brain, okay, 1, 2, and I would just count. Um, and if I felt like something was going on too long, I would sing a song in my head. Like, so it's just like, I felt like it's more open for me. Not that I like it, but I've done too many of them for me to fight it. And it's not a cage. The whole thing is not a cage. It's just they stabilize your head for the brain ones.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
So her last memory, going back to Elle, her last memory in the tank, she sees and hears a Russian man talking. So that kind of starts the, question, are they using Elle to spy on the Russians?
Yeah, and I think the conversation she has with Dr. Brenner, it's so cute. She's like, hurt him? He says, no, no hurt him, just listen. And like, you just like see her innocence, like wanting to appease Dr. Brenner, but not wanting to do anything bad.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, hurt him. Oh, sorry.
Mm. I know.
Towards the end of this episode, we see Nancy and Jonathan, who are not in a relationship. Jonathan does know that Nancy's with Steve, and Steve and Jonathan do not get along at all. But still they join forces because Jonathan's brother Will is missing and Nancy's friend Barbara is missing. And they're starting to see that they're very well connected. Nancy did come encounter with the monster, and after Jonathan goes through the photographs that he had taken, he's starting to realize that she's correct and that this monster could have very well taken Barbara and Will. So they're in the woods with their makeshift weapons, and they come across a wounded deer. And in an effort to try and help the wounded deer, they encountered the monster who, quickly takes the wounded deer and brings it into the upside down. From what I remember, Nancy finds the upside down entrance first, and somehow, that girl just goes right into that tree to go after it. I don't. I mean, I don't know why she didn't wait for Jonathan. I don't know why she went in by herself, but she does. And while she's in there, she actually sees. And while she's in there watching the monster face to face, she accidentally steps on a branch and the monster realizes she's in there. So I don't know if it's a he or a she or what it is, the monster starts to go after Nancy. So luckily she is able to, following Jonathan's voice and Jonathan following her voice, they both find their way back to each other, and he is able to pull Nancy out of the tree. And that became her first glimpse into the upside down after she's face to face with this monster.
Yes, Elle. I love this part of the episode where she goes into the tree. And I personally, you would not catch me going in that tree after the monster. If I saw that thing with the deer, I would be out, gone. Sorry, Barb. Peace out. I would not be chasing that thing. That thing, those demogorgons are horrifying. So you would definitely not catch me in the tree. But that brings me to some of the things I did love about this episode. So that was definitely one of them, was just the bravery she had of going in that tree, because you would not catch me doing that. I also really liked, you kind of really begin to see the beginning of Nancy and Jonathan's friendship slash, romantic relationship. So I really enjoyed watching the beginning of that and watching it transpire. Again, just Nancy overall was one of my favorite parts, seeing her really become a leader and be, she's just strong and fierce and all the men love her. So I love that. Definitely Joyce kicking Lonnie out. Highlight of the episodes, get his ass out. And then just to sum up my favorite parts, was my last favorite was just Hopper just coming to realize that everything is messed up and he wants to figure it out. I really just enjoyed kind of seeing that transpire as well.
Yeah, I love Hopper. I love him for his resilience. I love him that he can turn such a tragic event that he endured and turn it into this full force type of unstoppable, not just cop, but person who is willing to safeguard all the kids and fight for what's right. But one of my favorite things about this episode is the term mouth breather. Used as an insult, referring to anyone who is stupid, annoying, less than, rude, to the bullies. I love that Mike teaches Elle this. I love when she starts to actually understand when to use the term, like when they are I think it was when they were in the auditorium and they were talking about Will's death and those little bully kids. I love when she's in the grocery store stealing the Eggo waffles and the guy's trying to stop her. She uses the term. I love how cool Mike is at such a young age. I think in the beginning, he doesn't look at Elle like a girlfriend. I think he looks at her like someone that he can believe in and stand by. And he literally teaches her, just like his youngest sister Holly. Um, and then I just love to watch Elle's confidence develop over a short period of time, given how much she went through and how sheltered her life is from the social world that most kids live in. You know, I would say that this episode shows a lot about the cast, not the actors, but the actual cast members in their roles, and watching their friendship bond, even though there's some ups and downs, especially with Lucas, who is a little infuriating right now for me. That friendship bond has been tested so far, but then it becomes sort of solidified, especially when they realize the common purpose and they realize that they can trust each other. I think it's also a great thing that seeing Joyce's character and seeing that, because most mothers do have the innate ability to connect with their children even when their kids are missing. And that we can't always teach our children to be leaders. We can't always give them the strength that they need or courage, or give them that innate ability to face scary and tragic events. And then, like in this episode, we realize that we did teach them because they are doing it. They end up doing, and they ended up showing us in the audience, you know, that they did learn it. And to me, that's awesome.
Yeah,
What a-
and definitely, mother's instinct. Like we talked about how much freedom we had as kids in the 80s, and we'll say 90s too, because we talked a lot about our own childhoods when, we were really little. How strong friendships can be, and just how quickly you can bond with someone. And sometimes we've talked about this with our relationship. Like you just know that this person is meant to be in your life in some capacity, whether that be friendship or romantic or whatever, banding together to help fight against evil, whatever it might be.
Yes,
So
Doc.
a favorite quote from this episode. I love this one. I'm going to try to do it in my best Joyce voice. Maybe I'm a mess. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm out of my mind. But God help me, I will keep these lights up until the day I die if I think there's a chance that Will's still out there. Did I do good?
You did great.
Well, thank you everyone for coming and listening again. We hope that you enjoyed it, and we will listen and talk to you next time.